What's up, gang? In honor of dropping the famous Yin and Yang tight end rankings and series, I figured I would just take a second to go through the rankings and tell you exactly what I'm doing in drafts so far in best ball drafts and how I'm applying it to redraft leagues. Now, the secret to these rankings are not that they specifically tell you who to draft, but more so how to draft and how to be flexible in your drafts to get the best value out of the tight end position. That's why we set it up the way we do. Not necessarily that we're specifically only taking certain guys, but to let you know, okay, if this guy slides at this value, take him. This is a guy we like at ADP. These are guys we're avoiding. It's how you can navigate your draft and leave with the best value and feeling comfortable that you have the position covered, right? So first we'll start with this standalone section up top. And basically what that is these are 5 guys that I consider to be the most elite. And if you're spending up to drafting them at their ADP or around their ADP, you've invested enough at the tight end position that these are your guys. You've made your bet. You're starting this guy for most of the season and only worrying about your bye week, right? So the way I go through it is this. If Travis Kelce slides, now he's going at the end of the first. If he goes somewhere in the second, I might be willing to draft him, right? But I'm not paying for him at ADP because I'm taking all the guys that can essentially be the number one flex player in the league. A tight end's never been the number one flex in the league. So I'm taking a lot of running backs and wide receivers before I go to Kelce. So for me, I don't end up getting him that often. Same with Mark Andrews, right? He goes in like the mid-second. That's why he's yellow on this chart here. He's a guy that he usually goes before I take him. Now, Kyle Pitts, he's going in the 3rd round, and I think he has similar upside to those 2 guys. That's why he's a guy that if he's there at the right price, I'm willing to take him at his ADP, right? We round it out with Darren Waller and George Kittle, who we know they have an elite upside. In the full write-up, you'll see why I'm not super comfortable reaching for them or typically even drafting them around their ADP. But if they slide, you got to take the value, right? So those are the 5 guys I'm most comfortable with. After that, if I don't get those guys, I'm going with the Yin and Yang tight end pairing system. Now, the idea here is that if you don't take a guy from that top group, you wait and you take one safe guy who has a decent floor but not that high of a ceiling, right? He might be the 3rd target on his team, or he might have somebody injured on the team early where you can start in the beginning, but you don't necessarily trust him for the whole year. You take one of those guys and you pair him with another guy that's super risky, low floor, but high ceiling, right? He has some sort of path to being the top target on his team or a top 2 target on the team, and you can't really trust him right off the bat, but he could have massive upside if he realizes the high end of his potential. This is how we found, the Mark Andrews of the world and the Darren Wallers. Mark Andrews that year was tight end 15. Darren Waller was tight end 18. You weren't drafting them to start for your team, but if you didn't draft them as your second tight end, you probably didn't get him on waivers, or you had to rush to get him off waivers because they were such a hot commodity. This system gives you a chance to get both worlds, right? So I look at Dalton Schultz, TJ Hawkinson, and Zach Ertz, the first 3 guys on the left over there. These are guys that, we've seen them be rock solid, but they have some issues in terms of not being the top targets on their team or additional target competition, right? Dalton Schultz, while Michael Gallup's out, he's a great guy to start, but when he comes back, it could be a little dicey between him and CeeDee Lamb. Same with TJ Hawkinson, where they added DJ Chark, Jameson Williams, DeAndre Swift is coming back, Amon-Ra St. Brown's there. There's a lot of target competition. Zach Ertz, another perfect bridge tight end, where we get 6 weeks while DeAndre Hopkins is out. And during those 6 weeks, you can start him, feel comfortable about him. He's a pretty good guy in terms of red zone targets, end zone targets. But when DeAndre Hopkins comes back, now they have Marquise Brown. Hopkins is back. Obviously, Rondell Moore, AJ Green. It could be a little thin at that point, right? So these are guys you draft, you wait, and you take them at good value if you can get them. Start them during the early going, but you still want to be using a bench spot, using a late draft pick, looking for upside. So on the flip side, say you grab a Zach Ertz, you wait, and you grab like tight end 9 or 10 Zach Ertz at his ADP. Now you take a bench spot and you add another guy during the draft that could be a top 2 target on his team. Why can't Cole Kmet be a top 2 target on his team? He was a top 2 target on the team last year. He had 93 targets. Every tight end that finished top 5 in PPR going back to 2003, Randy McMichael, had either 90 targets or 10 plus touchdowns. And guess what? No tight end in the league last year had 10 touchdowns. So we want those targets. That's why it's so important to be a top 2 target. Hunter Henry, He's a guy that could be a top 2 target, or he had 9 touchdowns last year. It's not crazy for him to hit that double-digit touchdown barrier that we're looking at. Cole Kmet, he had 0 touchdowns last year. That's kind of a tough ask, but he's got the targets, right? Evan Ingram, this is another guy who, just a year ago had the 4th most targets in the league. He's been a top 5 tight end with Eli Manning, right? The last 2 years, the Giants have been dead last in touchdowns. Now he goes to a new team where he could be a top target. He could be a complete bust. That's why you can't start Evan Ingram week 1. That's such a risky move, but you want to have exposure to that just in case. What if he is the favorite target of that offense? Doug Peterson, who was the coach for Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. You want to give yourself a chance. If he isn't good, who cares? He's a late round pick. You just drop him, move on to the next guy, right? Other guys off this list that we like, Brevin Jordan, now with John Mechie out for the season. Why can't he be a guy that, it can be the second target after Brandon Cooks? It's basically him versus Nico Collins. You look at Austin Hooper, you're hearing good things about him with Ryan Tannehill. David Njoku could be the second target after Amari Cooper. You go through the list and you basically say to yourself, okay, if I got Kyle Pitts or somebody at a great value, perfect. I'm all set at tight end. I just worry about the bye week. If I didn't, I want to set myself up for the early season so I don't fall flat on my face, get myself a Schultz or Hawk or Ertz, stick them in there and say, okay, 6 weeks, I'm good. In the back of your mind, you keep an eye on our rankings, keep it on my Twitter where I'll be dropping all my recommendations on who to add, and you try and find yourself upside. Every single season for the last 5 seasons, there's been a tight end who was drafted outside the top 17 tight ends that finished top 5. Evan Ingram, Eric Ebron, Mark Andrews, and Darren Waller, Logan Thomas, last year Dalton Schultz. We're going to find them. This is the way to do it. This is how you be flexible in your drafts, get the upside that we're looking for, and finish up at the top of your league instead of just picking some guy like Dallas Goedert or Mike Gesicki, who's probably going to be a back-end tight end 1, and you're probably going to come in 3rd place. So that's how the strategy works. Feel free to DM me at Coupe Fiasco. Definitely check out the full write-up. There's 4 articles, the 4th one being Yin Yang tight end. Let's win some leagues. Let's go.